Just, here comes the rabbi.
Hi, Rabbi.
Hello.
We can't find Paula.
All right, everybody. Jumping into today's or this week's parsha, Parshat Ve'era. Parshat Ve'era picks up exactly where we left off in Parshat Shemot. In Parshat Shemot, which is the name of the parsha is names. Alas, or the name of the book rather is names. Shemot, and we indicated that while the theme of the book is Exodus, which is why it's called Exodus, there's also a byline of the name, the subtitle of the book, Sefer Agula, the book of redemption, or Exodus, which is where the secular name comes from, or the English name. We call it Shemot. And last week we actually made a big focus on the Shemot, not the name of the Jewish people, which is why it's called Shemot, Ve'ela Shemot Bnei Israel, this is the name, but rather the name of God, right? Because Moshe said that when I come to the Jewish people and I tell them, they're going to ask me, what's your name? And we said that that's not going to be because the Jewish people are just simple yentes, right? Right? If somebody comes and is trying to pull you out of a burning building, if a rescuer is coming and pulling you out of a burning building, the first question is not going to be, hey, what's your name, please? First, middle, and last, and exact spelling, right? That's not going to be what you're going to be asking. So why, when Moshe turns and says, the people will ask me, as soon as I tell them, they'll ask me, what is your name? Because we understand that a name is more than just a name, especially when it comes to God. God has multiple names because each one of the names is a definition. It's a persona. This carries forward in this week's parsha as well, because the very opening phrase of this week's parsha is Moshe enduring his sophomore slump. Moshe is in the midst of his sophomore slump. What's a sophomore slump? A sophomore slump is what we all experience after we come out of the gate hot, right, and all ready to go, right? Every single one of us has had this experience. Athletes have it, so the term has pretty much been coined about athletes, but it is the idea that when you're kind of fresh, you come out with this straight out of the gate with this strength and this momentum, and you achieve a lot of amazing things, and then somewhere you hit a wall, right? And kind of it just that all that momentum is gone, and to a certain degree, you're left kind of without any ability, fuel to move forward. This is why that in general it says that statistically, a New Year's resolution does not survive the first weekend. You make this commitment, you come out of the gate, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, whatever it is, you hit the first weekend and boom, it's done, right? So that's a very quick sophomore slump, right? It comes in very quickly. Sometimes it goes for a while. Sometimes, right, when it comes to sports players, sometimes they're really great in that first season, and then that second season or the second half of the first season, whatever it is, they hit this lull, the slump. And as we said, this is stuff that we all deal with, right? You come out of the high holiday season, all inspired for spiritual growth, et cetera, and then boom, something happens, and you hit this slump, and it's very hard, and you start to question yourself. You say, was I delusional when I thought I really got this, I can do this, and I could really, passion and what have you, I could really grow in this way? Clearly, it was fake. It was a delusion. If here I am, and it seems all gone. So what was I thinking, right? Now Moshe, the Jewish people hit their sophomore slump, as it were, in last week's Torah portion, when God tells Moshe, "Go tell the people that I'm here to take them out." Right? That after 210 years, Moshe says, "What happens if the people won't believe me?" Right? And God turns to Moshe and says, "How dare you? How dare you speak negatively about my people? How dare you speak lashon hara about my people?" And in fact, the signs that he gives them to show that he's real is a kind of a tacit admonishment to Moshe Rabbeinu, because it's stick your hand into your first throw down the staff and will turn into a snake, right? You are speaking snake-tongued about my people. You're speaking lashon hara about my people. And the second thing is you'll stick your hand into your garment and pull it out, and it'll come out white as tzara'at, right? Leprosy, which is the not sarat, not leprosy, but sarat, which is the punishment
Lashon hara.
for speaking lashon hara, right?
Yeah.
For speaking negative about somebody behind their back. So God is punishing, or not punishing, but admonishing Moshe for having this negative sense of the people of what of the people's belief in God. But then you follow the story, and it seems to be that Moshe was right because Moshe says, "Let's go, let's go." He comes to the people and says, "God's going to take it. Let's go and confront Pharaoh." Right? And like leads a march. By the time they get to Pharaoh's palace, how many people are on that march?
20%.
Not even that original march to Pharaoh's. Who walks into the
Oh.
palace to confront Pharaoh? Moshe and Aaron. That's it.
Oh,
Everybody
yeah.
else
That was a lot
is
less than
disappeared down the
20%.
side alleys. The crowd dwindles by the time they make it to Pharaoh's palace, right? And then things get really tough. Moshe comes and he says, "Let my people go," right? With all that strength and conviction. And Pharaoh turns around and says, "Absolutely not." And in fact, if the people really have all this time to sit and complain and there's delusions of getting out, then apparently they're not working hard enough, right? And so therefore, Pharaoh says from this point forward, they don't get any of the raw materials, and they still have to keep up their daily building quota, right? So making it absolutely impossible for them. And it becomes really hard for the people. So what do? They come and complain to Moshe. Why did you do this? What do you think you're doing over here? You just made life more hard. You said you came in as the savior, and you just made life harder for us, right? So the people seem to have lost all their belief. Where's their belief in God? Moshe was right. They weren't going to see him as the savior. In fact, they see him as the opposite, right? And the truth is, and Moshe himself is questioning. Turns to God and he says, "What lama hariota? Why do you do this?" Because basically, what happens is the truth is God was right. Initially, the people did have faith and belief, which is remarkable because after 210 years of being a slave, here you would assume a tremendous amount of cynicism would have built up, so that when Moshe comes and says, "Hey, I'm here, on behalf of God, you're going to be saved," the people probably would have immediately brushed it off and disregarded. But no, vayiktu vayishtachavu, the people actually bowed and prostrated themselves in gratitude to God. They did. They really did believe. But then they got mugged by reality, right? Seemingly. Right? It says, "Oh, so Moshe's like, great, you believe, come, let's go face off with Pharaoh." Oh, face off with Pharaoh, huh? Well, maybe I'll get around to that a little bit later. They hit their sophomore slump, and then Moshe hits his sophomore slump because his momentum carries him to that first confrontation with Pharaoh, and he looks Pharaoh in the eye and he says, "Let my people go." And then he performs the miracles. He throws down the staff and he does all these things, but it doesn't go well, right? And Pharaoh, a brilliant manipulator, turns the people against Moshe, and they complain to Moshe, and then Moshe complains to God and says, "Why? Why are you causing so much pain to the people? Why did you send me? This is going so badly." Right? Moshe hits his own, not because he didn't believe, and that's the truth of the matter. We all have that when we come out of the gate, with that momentum and that strength and that conviction. That's real. But then we hit this inevitable sophomore slump. We hit reality, when to a certain degree that inspiration from above, as it were, that we were kind of cruising on. It wasn't our own drive. It was like an infusion from outside of inspiration from God or whatever it is, and that carries us to a certain point, and more importantly, shows us that we can do it. But then that inertia runs out. That momentum runs out. And it's inevitable. It's inevitable that it will. Because God says, you're not going to cruise on my fuel. You got to cruise on your fuel. I'm not going to do it for you. I'm going to do it through you. And that's how this parsha opens up. Moshe turns to God and he says, God, Lama Hari, in the end of last week's parsha. And we, in a sense, leave that in last week's parsha. And this parsha, we open up with Hashem's response, right? He says, well, God, this is so difficult. You sent me on a mission and it's not going well.
Mm.
And I'm second guessing my ability. I'm second guessing why you would send me. And what really is the plan? Like, how's this supposed to work? And God turns to him and says, you know what, Moshe, I appeared to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov in El Shaddai. And my name, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, right? That high, that name of Hashem, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, I never made known to them. But I kept my promise to them and they believed and they trusted, etc. Now, here's the thing. God says, I revealed myself to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov in El Shaddai. Anybody go look at a map of ancient Middle East, Mesopotamia, etc. Is there any place on the map called El Shaddai?
Mm.
The answer is no. Where exactly did he go? Where is this place? And the answer is El Shaddai is not a spatial reference. It's not a place anywhere. It's not a geographic reference. It's a name of God, as we've talked about. These are names of God, kind of continuing what we were talking about in last week's class. Shemot, right? Names. Names are very important things, right? Names are important things. And here God is saying, to Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov, I've only revealed myself to them as El or Shaddai, two names of God, which are two ends of a spectrum. Because names of God, for the most part, are utilitarian. They are descriptive names of particular roles, roles, that God plays. Right? Rabbi, doctor, fireman, etc., etc. This is not his real name. It's a description. When God is in the persona or is manifesting the attribute of divine kindness, we use the name El. Aleph Lamed, El. And when God is in his persona of discipline and measured, etc., he is Shaddai. Sometimes Elohim, it depends. It's a nuance, but and what it means is these are descriptive, circumstantial names of God. They are not his essential name. Rather, they are utilitarian. When God is in this role, and what is he saying to Moshe? He says that to the patriarchs, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. I gave them the insight of these circumstantial names. I gave a divine infusion of in a sense of divine insight, but divine insight as per the circumstance, as per the moment. They got a boost and an infusion of the name of God that means kindness, a fusion of divine kindness, a fusion and an insight of divine discipline or judgment. You know what I did not give to them? Ushmi Yud Kei Vav Kei, and the name Yud Kei Vav Kei Lo Nodati Lahem. I did not give them my essential name, my transcendental name. My name, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, is God's name because Yud Kei Vav Kei is Haya Hoveh V'Yeh, was, is, and will be, all in one, which is God's kind of infinite name, his name beyond measure, his name beyond boundaries, his name beyond definition. His true name, his true transcendental name. It says that I never allowed them to perceive reality in the way that I perceive it, from the Yud Kei Vav Kei perspective, from that bird's eye view of seeing everything, past, present, and future, all at once. Rather, they never got to see past, in a sense, this moment's in the script. So what does that mean? That means when I told Abraham, go, lech lecha, right? Leave everything you know behind and go to the land where I will show you, and I will make it great and it will be wonderful. And Abraham said, aye, aye, right? Aye, aye, captain. And he headed out. And he did. He did as I told him. And he came to the land that I told him will be this land that you will be great. What happened when he got to the land of Canaan? It was terrible. There was a famine. Immediately, he was forced to go down to Egypt, where Pharaoh abducted his wife. Right? And he didn't see what's going to come. There was no assurances that everything was going, how it was going to work out, etc. I told him, go to this land. He went, and it worked out badly. And I didn't show him anything more. I didn't give him the divine insight as to what's going to come down. I did not give him the Yud K Vav K. I did not, in a sense, give him that transcendent view of past, present, and future to see all of it and how it all fits together, what the master plan of everything. So he didn't know more than what he was experiencing in the moment. But did he ever question me? Did Avram ever question when facing his challenges and facing the difficulties? Did Avram ever question?
No, almost to his detriment.
He never did. Right? He never did.
About to kill his own son.
Well, sacrifice his own son. Right? But again, he did that without knowing to a certain degree what was going to come. Right? And that was the point. Never did the patriarchs or matriarchs, even without knowing what the next chapter will be, without knowing how this will play out ahead of time, did they ever sit there and complain about the challenge? Because they never lost faith and trust in me. So much so does this become the legacy of the patriarchs and the matriarchs that they bequeath this to us. They have made this, they built it in to their spiritual DNA. It did not become something that they just kind of had achieved. It wasn't just an achievement that they had this kind of faith. They actually rewired the very nature of their soul to that, so that this faith and trust in Hashem became part of the very fabric of their soul, so that they are able to bequeath it to their inheritors, to us. Which is why the way we refer to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are not as our teachers or our elders, but we call them our matriarchs and our patriarchs, our mamas and tatas, right? Because they gave us an inheritance. We carry that spiritual DNA, which makes us ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim. The fact that we are remarkable believers in God, despite the terrible challenges and tragedies and genocides, et cetera, that the Jewish people have gone through, that we still believe in God, we're still connected to God, etc. That is all because that has become our heritage, our legacy. We receive that as a bequeathment from Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. And in this way, they stood out. So even though, as God says, I never gave them the full picture, I never gave them the bird's eye view in the way that I'm giving it to you, Moshe. I never gave that to them. And still, they only felt me at their side. They did not feel me kind of leading them. I never showed them the whole story. I never gave them that hayaho v'yakach. I never gave them that transcendental bird's eye view of everything that's coming. And yet still they never lost faith and they never questioned. And it leads God to say, as Rashi paraphrases, quotes the Talmud and says, paraphrasing for God, Chaval al da'avdim lo mishtachim, which means a pity for those that we have lost and we don't have their like again. Which in the modern English parlance is, they don't make them like they used to. Right? And he's admonishing Moshe Rabbeinu about this. He says to have this level of faith, but this is in a way that Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov stood out to the point where later history says that Moshe had one kind of request from God. He says, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei Avotenu Elokei Abraham Elokei Yitzchak Elokei Yaakov v'Elokei Moshe. How about it, God? Sounds pretty good, right? Can I And God turns to Moshe and says, Moshe, you are the greatest who ever lived, but in this aspect, there's only that is an exclusive club. Ein karim lavot ela shlosha. Only those three get that title. You're in this, they stand apart. And what he was telling Moshe is, I'm giving you even more insight than I gave them, but I'm not going to do it for you. And you're going to face challenge. And that's part of the process. That's part of life. That's part of the journey. That is what. How do you get through the sophomore slump? By knowing that this is part of the journey. That you have to work through those challenges and maintain your faith and trust in God and maintain your faith and trust in yourself despite the difficulties that you face. And actually, the difficulties and the challenges you face will help you discover both the abilities that God put into you and the conviction that you yourself have. And so you have to go through the desert to get to the promised land. The happily ever after doesn't happen automatically. And that is perhaps one of the biggest injustices that Hollywood has and Disney, right, have painted in this world, which is that happily ever after. Oh, just you automatically you do that little thing, you make the commitment, right? You make the thing, and then I'm ready now for the happily ever after. No. Now you're ready to put in the sweat and the work and the toil because that's the way it goes. But importantly, this is perhaps such a key thing. There are two words in Hebrew that many people think are synonymous, but they actually each are separate, crucial ingredients. Emunah and bitachon. Emunah and bitachon. Faith and trust. Faith and trust. These are not synonymous. Faith is what gives you that original inspiration that helps you shoot out of the gate. There is a God, there is a mission, there is a purpose. I have that purpose, and I am committed to achieving it. But you come flying out of the gate and you go run smack into a Pharaoh. It's going to happen. There's going to be a Pharaoh. Because that's why it's a mission and not a cakewalk or a stroll in the garden. There's going to be opposition. There's going to be a version of Pharaoh from the outside, from the inside. Sometimes it's external pharaohs, sometimes it's internal pharaohs, right? Your own Yetzer Hara, etc., etc. And you're going to have to confront Pharaoh. And Pharaoh's not going to make it easy. Pharaoh knows your number, as they say. He knows all the best tactics to put significant obstacles in your path. And at that point, if you're not prepared for it, then you give up. You're saying, I made the commitment, it was going great, and now it seems like the floor dropped out from under me, and I hit this wall, or whatever metaphor you want to use, and therefore my forward progress has been stymied. And you throw up your hands and say, so. And what happened to that emunah? What happened to that faith? Well, that's the answer. Emunah itself can't carry you all the way. Because nothing is meant to carry you all the way. Rather, bitachon. Now comes trust. Trust is a different animal. Trust is believing that God is with you in your reality. Doesn't give you the transcendent view. It's finding God within yourself. Finding your path forward in the maze. Having the conviction and the understanding that I can get through this. Not that I will soar above it. but I have the wherewithal to get through it. Because God says, I'm not here to do it for you. If so, I don't need you. I don't need you. If I'm going to do it, then why are you here? Rather, now's the time, now that you saw that you can do it, because you did it up until this point. Now that reality comes setting in and the inertia and the momentum, whatever it is, now move forward with trust that that God will bless you in all that you do, and dig deep and find it. So know that the sophomore slump is inevitable, but that it is a phase, and there's another side to it. This desert is not unending. The goal is not to make do with the desert, not to wander the desert. So one of the terms I hate when people refer to this is they say the Jews wandering in the desert. They don't wander in the desert. They weren't lost. They had a guide. They were marching through the desert resolutely. Now there was times that their journey got extended because they made wrong decisions in this march through the desert, because even that desert, it wasn't even just a metaphor. It was real, right? You made a mistake. You stayed in the desert longer. Why? Because the desert is a growth experience. It's you facing the challenges. You do not come out of the desert until you're ready to come out of the desert. It's very interesting that the relationship with God is always there. God is always present. But at times, depending on the circumstance, God either wants you to follow, to come along, or to lead. Part of having trust is to know what the circumstance is. Sometimes Hashem says, for example, walking into that desert originally, God says, I don't expect you to lead in this. I don't even expect you to walk alongside, but follow. When I say, as God says, Lech teich acharai bamidbar, follow me into the desert. Be ready to follow. There are times when God says, walk alongside me. Right? When it says, when God, the opening of next week's Torah portion, Bo el par, come with me to Pharaoh. The word bo means come. It doesn't say go to, it says bo, come. Let's go side by side. God says, I will stand right next to you as you face and confront, in this case, your own animal soul, right? Your own inclination. You're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to do the confrontation, but know that I am standing alongside you, and I will bolster you, and I will tip the scales in your favor, which is what David HaMelech says. Kiyamod l'min evyon. That God stands to the right of each of this poor person, which is you. Loshia mishofte nasho, to save him from the judging of his own soul, because you have two judges. You have the godly soul and the animal soul. Each one has a vote. So how is it that the godly soul is going to win? Right? It's a 50-50 effort. The animal soul is just as strong as the godly soul, seemingly. Each has one vote, right, in this judgment. So how are you going to win this judgment? Because God is standing as that third voice right alongside you, so that when you face off with your animal soul, there is actually a conviction that will help overpower the animal soul. The natural tendency for us to want to do the good, to do the right thing. So you have that voice inside of you says, do the wrong thing. You have that voice that says, do the right thing. God says, I'm alongside you here. It's not just you and Pharaoh. And you're going to have that innate conviction to do the right thing. Where do you think that comes from? Who's got to make that decision? You do. Who's got to confront the Pharaoh? You do. Come with me, but come. It's going to be your effort. And then there are times where God says, I expect you to lead, to go out there, strike, strike forward, go forward, strike out on the path. Lech lecha. And I will be there for you. But I want you to take the lead. This is what happened when the people who were followed God into the desert were not ready to lead out of the desert, which is what the maturity was. At that point, you have to be the ones ready to go, oh, we can't, we're afraid. God, show us the way. God, you take care of it. No. God says, no. I led you into the desert, but you're going to need a lead into the Holy Land. Because you have to achieve that maturity. So the point is, this parsha opens up and says to Moshe, Hashem is wagging a finger of admonition. When Moshe comes and he says, God, this is God, so why did you send me? I came to Pharaoh and the answer was no, and life became hard and difficult. And God says, well, what did you expect? You expect that just because you accepted to do the right thing, it was all going to get peachy and sunshine and rainbows? Right? And lemon drops and gun, whatever it is, the whole sun, right? Whatever his a fellow named Israel wrote a song about what it's like over the rainbow, right? But it was a lemon drops and whatever it is. But the truth is, he got it wrong, because it's going to be work. It's going to take work, because you want there to be the lemon drops and whatever it is. That's not going to fall from the sky. It's going to be, you're going to bring it about. God says, you're going to put in the work.
Okay, so Hashem created human nature such that if we got lemon drops and rainbows, we wouldn't appreciate it. And within a year or less, we'd be soft and we'd be lying around and doing nothing and having no faith. So he knew that our lives had to be difficult with a tremendous amount of challenges. So he presented the challenges so that we would do the right thing, even though it's extremely painful.
I would say it differently.
But do you agree in principle?
No, because I was going to say, that would make it seem that the only reason, because God could have created us with a different nature, so why didn't he? Why didn't he just create a nature that we don't need all the tsaras? And it's a little bit a chicken or the egg thing.
Why didn't
the other way? It's the other way around. This was a world that needs refinement, and God understood that if he puts us in here, we have the ability to be the change agent.
But why didn't he make the world perfect?
Because if the world was made perfect, it wouldn't add anything to what God already had. God was perfection before. God was perfection before the world was created.
Right. So he didn't want to create an angelic realm.
To create a perfect world would be redundant. What do you give the God who has everything?
Right. Something imperfect.
No, something perfected. Something
You mean perfectible?
No, perfected. Something imperfect that you have made perfect.
Oh, that makes sense.
Wait a minute, that's what he gave us?
That's what we give him.
Yeah.
That's the necessity. That's the point of the world. A perfect world, a world created perfect, is nothing additional. A world created imperfect that God just makes perfect also is nothing new.
Right. So we became God's suffering
that is
servant.
Imperfect, that self-refines, that the creatures, the denizens of this world refine. That's amazing. What do you give the God who has everything? Triumph. Because you can't have triumph if you can't fail. You can't have triumph if whatever it was already perfect.
Okay,
but it can only be a triumph.
But he knew that in order to fulfill this whole scenario, that we'd be suffering a lot.
Because that's the very definition of it. Challenge is built into the system. But challenge is not just, what's it called? Challenge is the greatest, overcoming a challenge is the greatest source of any sense of meaning. And if you think about it, if you are right now, somebody handed you 2 pages of arithmetic problems, 100 problems, 1 + 1 = 2, you fill all of that out. Do you feel like you did anything really special? Ha ha! I got 100 out of 100. 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 2 = 4. No, why? Why wouldn't you feel proud of yourself?
It's making us feel proud of ourselves to be able to overcome suffering.
No, I was just saying it shows something. But why wouldn't you feel proud of yourself?
Because there was no challenge.
Because there was no challenge. You didn't overcome. You didn't triumph over anything. You didn't grow.
So God thinks that the feeling of challenge and triumph is so delicious that he's willing to pay with our suffering. Sorry, I got onto this thing
It's
today.
not no,
Okay.
Jerry. Suffering is not what's challenge. Sometimes the challenge feels like suffering. When you go to the gym, are you like, oh, I'm suffering?
Yes.
No, shouldn't be. You got to change the mindset. It shouldn't. It doesn't have to be felt as suffering. It could be
Okay,
felt as growth.
but we have, you know,
As
we
yes,
have
you have to
the
move out of your
Holocaust,
comfort
we have
zone.
October 7th, we have everything to show for suffering. Okay, we can
Yeah,
prove
and
suffering.
we
If
also
God
have
wants
great.
proof of suffering, we can
But
we can
Jerry,
do
if the name of the game, but the name of the game is not suffering. It's not about. It's not. That's not the name of the game. Don't limit the scope of the picture just to suffering. It's not. It's not. It's not purely about suffering. The point is that if it was just about, if all of our history was just suffering, then would we be celebrating a proud Jewish history? Would the fact is that for the most part we have been able to actually see the hand of God, see the joy, see whatever it is, even in the moment, even if there is moments of suffering. Yes, there's no doubt that there's moments of suffering, no doubt that there's constant challenge, etc. But so there's time where it dips into the bitter and the truly bitter. But that doesn't define our history, and it doesn't define our legacy, and it doesn't define what this world is. You could choose to look at the world that way. You could choose to zero in on saying this is the suffering is the constant, and the moments of joy are the aberration. Or you could say it the other way around. This is God's garden. And if there's suffering, it means that there's still more that we have to do here. What is the nature of the world, and what is the cancer? What is the aberration? Is the world a world of suffering, and somehow every once in a while randomly sparks of light come through? Or is it that this world is God's garden, and the suffering is an indicative that it still needs to be worked on? And I think the fact is, at the end of the day, a part of the amazing Jewish legacy, and this is exactly it. Moshe was focusing in on his failure, and God is saying, "Don't, absolutely not. No, don't. That's not what defines this moment. Don't. You're saying, oh my God, I came to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, no, this whole thing has been a failure. God says, no. This is a challenge, and you can overcome it, but you need to believe in yourself. You need to trust in yourself. You need to have bitachon. The desert is not there to make you suffer. The desert is there to make you grow. You can have this Shalom Mordechai Rubashkin, right? He says that Shah Bitachon is the book that got him through being in jail, because he could have said over a decade of suffering. That's how he could have looked at it. Or he totally says this was a decade of challenge and triumph that has made me a different person on the other end. And it's all about how you choose how you choose to view, because that's the point. That's the sophomore slump. That's the sophomore slump. How you choose to frame it is going to be how October 7th. What does that on October 7th leave you with? Does it leave you with a sense of despair, or does it leave you with a conviction to make change in this world? Because this has to be changed. and I see it as a challenge, and I will not allow this to continue. I will be
I would
white.
answer,
and
I would answer to your question, yes. I
No.
have a sense of
in
despair.
this one, the answer is no despair. No despair. That's what they want from us. And that's how you know it's wrong.
Never let them see you sweat.
No, it's not about never let them see you sweat, but let them see you sweat in the effort to change and to turn around to look at an October 7th or look at these things and say, you're not going to beat me. I'm going to beat you. What's going to happen here, this is God's world. And there will be light at the end of this tunnel. And I have the conviction to push through the challenge and get there. This will not define reality. October 7th will not define reality. I will not allow it. That's the point. I will not allow it to define reality. I will not allow it to define Israel. And every single person that after that in the days, weeks, months after October 7th can come out and shop and live life and celebrate and dance with the Torah again on Simchas Torah, etc., and say we will not allow them to own Simchas Torah. Because this world is not a world of suffering and tragedy. No, it is not. Sometimes it feels that way. That's the point. Bitachon. I will change that. I will change that. We will change that. We will be the catalytic engines, the forces for change that move the world to where it's actually meant to be. And if people are walking around feeling like October 7th, that's the reality of the world, then we have a lot of work left to do. And that's the point. That's the moment. Moshe is kind of throwing up his hands. And God says, don't you dare put your hands down. There was a video of the Rebbe where one of the other Admorim, one of the other Rebbes from Israel, came to visit and they're talking to the Rebbe. You see this on the video. He comes to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe starts to talk to him about certain things that were going wrong in terms of a kind of religious life in Israel and things that need to be fixed. And he kept on going like this.
What'll be?
Like he's saying, I agree with you, Rebbe. It's a problem. It's a problem. Yeah. It really is. Yeah. And he thinks he's showing to the Rebbe that I agree. I empathize. I sympathize with the problem. And the Rebbe says, and he's like, and at a certain point, the Rebbe gets frustrated with him. And the Rebbe turns to him in Yiddish and says, Was macht ihr mit der Hand? He says, what are you making with your hands for? He tells him, he says, I'm here to engage in lamentations with you. I'm here to talk to you about a problem. Now use your hands to go fix it.
Use those hands.
Yeah, these hands, don't throw them up. So this is what Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu.
That's a good image.
Moshe Rabbeinu says, it's very heartfelt, meaningful words. He says, why are you causing so much pain to these people? Why have you sent me? And it's only been... And God says, put down your hands and get to work. And trust in me and trust in you. Trust that I have a plan. Trust that this world is God's garden. Trust in the beautiful and the positivity and the potential of this world. And trust that you, by me making you, Am HaNivchar, the chosen people, trust in you and the mission that I gave you and your ability to achieve it. That's this week. That's the opening statement to Moshe Rabbeinu in this week's parsha, and it's so, especially as you said, right? We can make how relevant this is each to everyone to remind ourselves of this truth. This is bitachon. This is when emunah shifts into bitachon. Emunah is a general belief. Bitachon is your role in it, your place in it, and your reality. Where the rubber meets the road. When a fellow like again, Shalom Mordechai Rubashkin suffers for 10 years from not being able to see his family. Is a child with Down syndrome, and his wife is doing all on his own, and it knows it's completely unfair that which has happened to him, and he's missing his children's weddings, and he's missing. And in it, he never refers to it as prison. He says, when I spent 11 years in a place called prison. Because he refused in his own mind to be there. He, like Yosef Hatzadik, when he was in prison, said, what's my purpose here? What's my mission here? What am I meant to achieve here?
Like the
What can
Rebbe
I
says,
do
you're
here?
never stuck. The Jew is never
Right.
stuck.
The Jew is never stuck, and the world is not defined by suffering. It doesn't mean that there isn't suffering. Of course there is. But if anything, what does that suffering do? What does that invoke in you? A sense of despair or a sense of action? And what it comes down to is bitachon. It comes down to the fact that I believe in God and I believe in myself, or rather, I trust in God and I trust in myself. And if Moshe didn't have it in that moment, if Hashem didn't move Moshe to have it in the moment, then Moshe would not have been there to then re-confront Pharaoh and to hear and to do it once and twice and 3 times and 4 times and 5 times and 6 times and 7 times and 8 times and 9 times. 9 times Moshe goes and he confronts Pharaoh and 9 times met with failure. Where Pharaoh says no, or worse, he says yes, and then he lies. Right? So there's that what's it called of hope, right? There's that moment of hope that then comes crashing down, which is almost worse than never not having the hope in the first place. And it happens 9 times, and Moshe goes back. And Pharaoh keeps on saying, "Come back, and I'm going to kill you." And all threats and what have you. And Moshe, though, now has that trust. If it doesn't work the first time, it doesn't work the second time. It doesn't work the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time, the sixth time, the seventh time, the eighth time, the ninth time. It's going to work. It's going to work. And each step along the way, God gives him a little something. Signs and miracles. But you can focus, you can choose. Do you focus on this clear sign of God's hand? Or you can focus on the fact that, I'm still here. I'm still suffering. So many things happen, so many miracles since October 7th, so amazing things, right? And then you can see those. You can see those, or you can see, oh, we're still there. Yes, Saris. It's still God's world. And it's a world of challenge. Because growth and changing is meant to be a challenge. It's not meant to be easy. Because easy means that God's doing it for you. If it's easy, it means that God is doing it for you. God trusts you enough for you to do it. God says, I'm not going to do it for you, I'm going to do it through you. And that's what it means to be Am Yisrael. And that's what it means to have trust in God. You wouldn't need trust if it's clear, open, and bright. It's trust when things are dark. It's trust when things are difficult. It's trust when the way is confusing and when you're facing the opposition. And the opposition is giving you every reason why you can't. And then you have a choice. Do you listen to that voice? Or do you dig deep and find that voice that says inside that tells you, Hashem trusts me, so I trust me. And that ultimately the Rebbe went and lost the majority of his family, as did most Jews at that point, to the Holocaust and into communist Russia. And he comes to the United States, a remnant of his family. His father was in a KGB. His father and mother were in KGB exile. Couldn't come. We're still. And he comes to the United States, and he lost his brother and sister-in-law to the Nazis. And his wife also, same story. Her father, the Rebbitzins' father, was the previous Rebbe, who was relegated to wheelchair because the KGB broke his body when they imprisoned him in the hell of a KGB prison. And then he had to deal and go through the Holocaust. He had a building collapse on his head during the Blitzkrieg on Yom Kippur services in Poland, in Warsaw. And he comes out, and this is the trauma that they lived through. And his first opening declaration, the first discourse of the Rebbe in taking over the mantle of leadership was Basi Lagani Achosi Kalam. God saying, I have come to my garden. This world is God's garden. How could he look at the world? It's October 7th every day for 4 years, understand? And they lived through it. And the first words coming out of the Rebbe's mouth was, this world is God's garden. And if you don't see how it is, that because we haven't finished our job. That's transcending. That's triumph. That's bitachon. And the bottom line is, the Rebbe said, we're going to get to work. And his Hasidim said, aye, aye. And then they picked themselves up and moved to every corner of the world and started doing it. And started uncovering the spiritual oasis that could be Las Vegas, that could be California, that could be Dubai. And of course, they met with challenge and difficulty. But ultimately, everybody knows they're winning. The momentum's on our side. And everybody knows that Chabad is not going to stop until Mashiach now. Marching, not wandering. Marching through a desert. And that is Exodus. That is Exodus. God says, I could take you out. But that's not the point. You confront Pharaoh and you take you out. Through me. I mean, me through you. Of course, it's God who took us out. But you be the catalyst. I could do this one of two ways, God says. I could lighten Pharaoh's heart and he'll wake up one day and say, yeah, let me let the people out. It's enough. Or I can trust that you will change the world. And you will face your Pharaoh and you will win. I trust you. So God trusts us. It's time that we trust us. That we trust God to trust ourselves. All right, everybody?
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Rabbi,
Right. Yes.
did,
Thank
did
you.
you get an email from Paula? Rabbi?
I did.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So as we said, again, I'm not sure how much yet she wants people to whatever to engage her directly about this, but this class is dedicated in the memory of Paula's mother. May her soul rise to ever greater heights, and may she may her mother's soul find peace and serenity, and may Paula and all the rest find comfort and strength.
Thank you.
Shalom.
All right,
Shabbat
everybody.
shalom.
Thank you.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Thank you.